Hello everyone, I am Dimitra Fimi. I am Professor of Fantasy and Children's Literature here at the University of Glasgow, and I am co-convener of the Fantasy MLitt programme.
And I'm Dr. Will Tattersdale. I'm a senior lecturer in contemporary fantasy cultures, co-director of both the MLitt Fantasy and the Centre for Fantasy and the Fantastic.
So here at Glasgow we have what we believe is the world's only Masters in Fantasy Literature. We're very proud of this programme that's been going for over 10 years now. And it is the jewel in the crown of the Centre for Fantasy and the Fantastic, and we'll tell you a little bit more about the centre further down. The programme is also sort of a centrepiece of a whole community of researchers, tutors, staff that are working, publishing and teaching fantasy. So in this slide, you can see the courses that you're going to have to take, the obligatory courses, if you're enrolling on the Fantasy MLitt program. First of all, we have Fantasy 1 and Fantasy 2. These two core courses happen across semester 1 and semester 2, and they try to survey what fantasy does from about 1780 all the way to today. It is obviously very little time to try to capture everything that fantasy does in that period, but we hope it gives some common ground to everyone. It looks at subcategories of fantasy, different modes. It will hopefully give us all some grounding in terms of some approaches, and also in terms of variety, I suppose, of texts. You might be coming to this course with a very particular niche in terms of author, in terms of subgenre, or in terms of period as well, but this course will give you a sense of this longitudinal sort of period of fantasy. So it is sort of historically organized, but there are thematic links within it as well. Then the third course there is the research training course. This is a course that all English literature masters take. This is not just for fantasy students, but it's a key course because it will give you the key research skills that you need to actually complete what is last here on this slide, which is probably the biggest thing you will do as part of the program. This is the fantasy dissertation. The dissertation is an independent piece of work. It is the pinnacle of your achievement as you work with us here on the Fantasy Masters. You can do it on any fantasy related topic. There's a lot of flexibility here, and we've had many exciting topics through the years. You will choose your own topic in conversation with staff, with other students. You may be coming to the course with ideas already about what you want to do, but be open also to different sort of possibilities and see how the course might expand your ideas of what you want to do. But you will be supervised. You will be matched with a dissertation supervisor, but ultimately this is your own piece of independent research, and as I said, usually a very proud moment when you submit it. So in addition to the core courses, you will be taking 3 option courses as well, 1 in semester 1 and 2 in semester 2. And you will see in this slide a selection of the kinds of courses we usually run. The offering does change a little bit year on year. And I just also want to make it absolutely clear that this is a tiny selection of a huge range of courses from across the school and also across the college. So all sorts of interests can be accommodated here, but what we've done here is we've just picked a few that are more fantasy related, or the kinds of courses our students tend to gravitate towards. So just to give you a few examples, Fantasy Across Media looks at transmedial fantasy in mediums such as film or TV or games and gaming and fandom. Children's fantasy literature is the one I usually run, and sort of speaks for itself, but of course there's a long tradition of children's fantasy that I'm sure you're all aware of. The world building course is about the process of creating secondary worlds. The Love, Death and Dragons Medievalism and Fantasy is run by our medievalist colleagues and looks at fantasy before the sort of historical parameters of Fantasy 1 and 2, so going back to medieval texts and inspirations. We also have creative writing course. This is not a fantasy specific course, but a lot of our fantasy master students are interested in not just reading and sort of writing on fantasy, but writing fantasy themselves. So that tends to be a popular one. at times. And as I said, I won't go through all of them, but there's many, many more. And again, just to reiterate that this list is correct as of the time of filming this. The offering does change a little bit year on year. Now, how you will be taught. If you took your degree in the UK, you will be probably familiar with seminars and workshops and lectures. At master's level, there are very few lectures. The bulk of the teaching is happening in small group seminars and workshops. And when I say small group, I mean a group of around 10 to 15 students. And the group will meet usually for a 2-hour slot or an hour and a half slot, depending on the particular course. And we will be discussing as a group a particular text, author, period, subgenre, theory, whatever it is that that particular seminar will be covering. These are interactive teaching sessions. You're expected to have done the work, to have done the reading, to have done the preparation. At times students do presentations as well in some of those. And we will be exploring ideas and texts together, and we'll be co-developing research questions and approaches, etc., etc. And these research questions are important. You know, this is a program that's designed to make you into an independent scholar, into an independent critical thinker, and all of these sort of teaching practice leads quite nicely and builds up to the dissertation that I talked about earlier on, this larger independent research project. So developing your ideas during the seminars and trying out ideas is important. There's also, of course, independent study, and you will be spending quite a bit of time in the library or in your own workspaces, getting the preparation done, working on your assessments, and developing your own interests. At the same time, there is at the University of Glasgow a really wide range of extracurricular activities that you could be involved in. The choice actually is quite staggering, you know, because there's many research centres, many different departments that offer particular activities. But we're very proud to be associated with a rich extracurricular program as part of the Centre for Fantasy and the Fantastic, of course, which will give you more bespoke opportunities to get involved with fantasy-related activities and opportunities. So I'm going to pass on to Will now and let him talk to you about this a bit more.
As a member of the Fantasy MLitt programme, you're also a member of the Centre for Fantasy and the Fantastic, which is an umbrella that organises some of the wider things we do at the University of Glasgow around public outreach and academic events. It's a unique intellectual community, and the MLitt is kind of the jewel in its crown. So the centre does all kinds of things throughout the academic year, and it's quite hard to advertise specifics because what we do is changing all the time. We often run an annual online-only conference called GIFCon, Glasgow International Fantasy Conversations. You can see some of the fantasy authors we've had speaking at that on this slide. But we're doing other things as well, often in-person conferences, for example, one-day symposia, academic events. We often do outreach events for the general public, as I already mentioned. These kinds of things change year on year, but we're always up to something, and it makes the wider intellectual environment here at Glasgow really exciting thing to be a part of.
One more thing to talk about is what happens after the Fantasy Masters. So what have our previous Masters Fantasy MLitt students gone on to do with their careers and their plans? It's lovely to be able to follow students' careers and look at their successes after the programme. So we've had students that have gone into teaching in various countries. We've also had students that have gone into the heritage sector, like museums and galleries. Students that have been employed by charities, and we've also had a good few students that have gone into the publishing industry, including as editors and as agents. We've also had a few students who enjoyed so much their time with us and their research into fantasy that they've decided to stay on and do a PhD with us. So if you go on the Fantasy Centre for Fantasy and the Fantastic page and you look under the tab called Postgraduate Members, you will see some of our previous students who did their PhDs with us and have now finished, and you will also see the names and topics of some of our current PhD students as well.
So hopefully that's given you a sense of the kind of community we are, the kind of stuff that we offer on the course. If you've got any more questions, do feel free to get in touch with me or with Dimitri. My email address is on this slide, however, and there's a link there for applications when you're ready to make one. We hope to see you in due course.